What's going on, guys? Kenny here from 619 Guitars and Gear, and today I'm going to show you how I took the frets and fretboard on this $300 Ibanez and turned them into this. It's a little bit of a longer video, so grab some coffee, take a seat, and make sure you watch all the way to the end so you can see a full before and after comparison, and you don't miss any steps of the process that will get you this result. All right, so we got the guitar on the bench. I already went ahead and took the strings off. You obviously don't need to see that. It's fairly straightforward. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and wipe down the fretboard. Even though it's a fairly new guitar, I just want to, clean it. And then I want to check the surface of the fretboard because it does seem a little bit rough. And I'm going to tell you and show you how I would take care of that. There's a couple different ways to do it. I will show you my method of doing it, but I will also explain another method of doing it. So let's go ahead and wipe this down real quick. I'm just going to use this Dunlop fingerboard 01 cleaner and prep. I got like nothing left in this, so hopefully I can get a spritz or two or 5. And we're just going to wipe this down. It's almost like it's not really like a rubbing alcohol, but it kind of smells like it and it dissipates like it, so I'm thinking it's fairly similar. I don't believe you can use this stuff on maple fingerboards. It says on the bottle, so just check the bottle and read the directions and make sure you don't use it on anything you're not supposed to. So we're just wiping this down real quick. Alright, so now that we got the fretboard wiped off, I'm going to go ahead and show you how I go about smoothing out the surface of the fretboard. Is this necessary? You don't have to do it, but it kind of just cleans it up, especially if you, have a guitar that's been played and it's kind of all gunked up. Sometimes the cleaner isn't good enough to, get all that stuff off. On a brand new guitar, it's not really necessary, but one thing I'm noticing is this Jatoba. It's kind of coarse and a little porous, so it has some rough spots. Does it really matter overall? No, but I kind of just wanted to smooth it out and just add to the nice smooth feel of everything. So a couple ways you could do this is you could use a real fine sandpaper, which, that would work. I wouldn't really recommend that method. You could use a real fine, quad zero steel wool. If you're going to do the steel wool, you just lightly rub it and it kind of will clean up the frets at the same time. Tape off your body, whatever you do. Tape off the pickups because the steel wool fibers will go everywhere and they will magnetically cling to the pickup and make a mess. And especially if you have chrome covers, you're just going to scratch them to an oblivion and it's just not going to be good. So tape off everything that needs to be taped off. It's a little bit more messy, but it will work. I like to use a razor blade. It's a little bit, I guess, more advanced of a method because you can kind of mess things up if you do it incorrectly. But it's really not that hard. I make sure it's a brand new razor blade and you're really using little to no force at all. You just kind of want to knock down any kind of high spots in the surface. And basically, you're going to just start at a fret and end at a fret going back and forth. You don't really want to stop or start in the middle because you could, make just like a little scratch mark or line and it might show in the wood. So I like to start at a fret and just slowly go back and forth. Work your way to the other side. Now you might see some sawdust, pop up, but that's just you knocking down any kind of high spots. Now you might say, oh, but you're changing the radius. You're really not. You would have to really, really go at it to do that. You're kind of just, I'm literally not putting any down pressure on the razor blade and letting it do the work. And you want to keep your razor blade flat. And it really, really smooths things out. Now you don't want to do this on any kind of finish. If the fretboard has a finish on it, do not use the razor blade method, or do not I wouldn't even do the steel wool method. I would just clean it up as best you can with some kind of cleaner and microfiber cloth. You really got to be careful when it comes to fretboards that are finished, but like a rosewood, an unfinished rosewood, or ebony, or the Jatoba that doesn't have the finish on it, it's perfectly fine to do it this way. I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up, and then we will move on. All right, so we got the surface all smoothed out. I mean, it's not necessary that you do that, but it does make, a difference in the overall feel of everything. Like I said, on a brand new guitar, is it really necessary? Not really, but it did have some high spots where it was a little rough, so I just wanted to smooth things out. So basically what we're going to do here is we're going to attack the fret ends. Not that they are bad by any means, but they can definitely improve. So I want to do the fret ends. I want to polish the frets, because that was my biggest complaint, is probably how crunchy the frets are. They definitely were not polished from the factory. And I want to, maybe think about rolling the edges of the fretboards. Those three things can really, really add to the playability of a guitar. So you have a $300 guitar that by the time you're done doing those things, you can make it feel and play like, a $800-900 guitar. I might be pushing it, but you can really get so much of a better feel out of the guitar by doing those things that they're not really doing at the factory. You get a, take for instance my Tim Henson Signature. That thing has polished fret ends. The fretboard edges feel great, nice and rolled. I mean, like, they really went the extra mile to make that whole thing feel great. Where you have a $300 guitar, they're really not going to take those steps. So you're going to, by you doing it, you're really just adding to the overall feel, and it'll make a cheaper guitar just feel really, really good. So we're going to start off. I want to get like a sanding block, maybe tape off the neck, because some of these frets are, sticking out further than the others. So I want to make them all even. Then I'm going to get the fret end file, and we're going to clean up the fret ends. Now, in this case, we're kind of just going to nip off the corner a little bit. I'm not going to go ahead and round off the whole fret end, but I just want to nip off the corners and just smooth them out. I mean, they're really, really good from the factory, but they definitely can improve a little bit. And then after that, we'll polish up the frets, and then we'll possibly roll the edges and just make this thing feel amazing. So I got everything taped off, anything that I would be scared of touching with the sanding block. The sanding block, it's not too coarse. I mean, it's not super fine, but this side right here is pretty fine. I'm not sure what grit it is, but I've used it before and I like the results. You can see I put a piece of tape on the frets because I don't really want to scratch up the top of the frets. But you're going to have this thing at an angle, so you're not really going to be touching down here. I mean, if you don't trust yourself, I would tape off the fret, the bottom of the neck here. But I mean, you're not really going to be touching that anyway, so there's really no need for it. The only thing I want to touch is the edges of these frets going up and down. Now, I don't angle it so it's at the same, angle as the fret ends. I like to, kind of go a little bit more straight than that. So all you are touching is literally the edge where the edge of the fret and the fretboard meet, kind of, like that. If this is the fretboard and that's the end of the fret, you only want to sand right here. So we're going to just take this sanding block and just lightly up and down. And it's not even really snagging it. You can go kind of up and down like that. And there's a bunch of different ways of doing this. This is just the way I like to do it. It's always worked well for me. I just want to keep a nice control on it, not putting too much pressure on there. You're kind of just trying to even out everything and even out the fret ends. Some stick out a little more than the others. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and clean this off. just get the dust off here. I'm going to keep the body taped up just to, you know, keep it protected for the rest of the process. But, oh yeah, that's so much better. You can just feel how even it is now. Now, you might see some like chalky looking look at the edge of the fretboard, but once you oil that, it's going to completely go away. But just telling, you know, now like the edge of the frets, they all look even. It just looks really, really good. So I'm really happy with how that came out. So I'm going to dust this off, and then we're going to get the fret end file, and we're just going to go in and clean up the fret ends. All right, so I got the fret end file. This one's from Fret Guru. This one's cool because it has a safe edge, it has a flat, perfectly straight edge, and then it has a beveled edge. We're going to use the straight edge, and on the bottom of that's the safe edge. So against the fretboard, you know, it's a nice smooth edge. You don't really have to tape anything off. You can if you want, but I like getting it nice and flush against the bottom of the fret end. And you're basically just literally nipping the sharp part of the fret off. You know, there's many ways to people like their fret ends. Some people round them off completely. I've done that on a couple guitars and it's pretty comfortable. But in this case, we're literally just taking that little bit tiny of a sharp corner off and then moving on to the next one. It's kind of a, you know, swoop and roll motion, which I'll demonstrate. But I'm not obviously going to film the whole thing because we'll be here all day. But I'll do a couple on camera and then I'll get this done and we will move on. I already did a couple here, so we're going to start about right here. So you're kind of just pushing, and as you're pushing, you're coming out like this to round it over, and then you're rolling at the same time. And then you literally move on to the next one. And I can tell you, just going this way and then coming back this way, it's crazy how much smoother it feels because all this side is done. It's really, really cool. So we're going to finish this up and then we'll move on. All right, so I got the fret ends all done. Actually, you know, rounded them off a little bit. That's just because how I like them. You don't have to do that. You know, you do 1 or even 2 strokes and it will, you know, clean up the fret ends dramatically. So, you know, I like that kind of roundish look. Once they're polished up and everything, they'll look really, really good. That's kind of how like the Tim Henson signature I have is. It's just, it looks really, really good and feels amazing because they're kind of rounded off, and then when they're polished, it feels so good. I have a piece of Scotch-Brite. I'm just going to go ahead and kind of, you know, clean it up a little bit, and then I have some micro mesh I'll come back with, and I will hit the fret ends with that and kind of just, you know, clean it up a little bit, and then it kind of just helps the polishing process once you start polishing everything. But I'm really happy with how this is turning out. I think it's going to be awesome. It's definitely going to feel really, really good. All right, so I got some micro mesh here. It's like 8,000 grit. I'm just going to go ahead where I hit with the Scotch-Brite and just clean it up a little bit. All right, so I decided before we go ahead and polish the frets, I want to roll the fretboard edges. Now, this is a preference. You don't have to do it, but I'll tell you this, it really adds a comfortable feel to your guitar. You'll notice a lot of some higher-end guitars have the rolled fretboard edges. You know, I think the difference between, you know, a regular Fender and a Fender custom shop is like the little details like we're doing here. I think, you know, Rhett Shaw did a video where he bought a regular Fender, bought it to a tech, had them, you know, give it the works, you know, fret ends. They did a plecking job on it, I believe. They rolled the fretboard edges, and they tried to see if they could make it feel and play like a Fender custom shop. And it seemed pretty close in my opinion. And Yeah, I mean, there's videos of Ron Thorne and everything else from Fender Custom Shop doing the same thing that I'm about to do when it comes to rolling the fretboard edges, and that's using a razor blade. And it's kind of like the same method we were using with scraping the top of the fretboard, but you're just doing it with the sides. You just want to knock down that edge and kind of round it off a little bit. So you would take your razor blade, start here, go back and forth, and as you're going back and forth, you want to roll the razor blade over to the side, not go too far. You want to go flush with the side of the fretboard. Just roll it a little bit just on that edge, back and forth, and just knock down that sharp edge a little bit, and it kind of just rounds it over. And you know, you can decide how dramatic you want to do it. You can really roll it, or you can just roll it a little bit. But I'm going to go ahead and finish this up, and I'll show you the results when we're done here. All right, so I got the fretboard edges rolled. It's not too dramatic. It's a lot better than it was. You know, you might not be able to tell on camera. It might not look, you know, that good. But once we oil everything, it's going to look really, really good. I mean, there's sawdust and everything all over, and it kind of has like a milky look to it just from scraping it and all that. I'm going to go ahead and wipe it down one more time before we start any fret polishing. Again, I'm using the Dunlop fingerboard cleaner, and just going to wipe everything down, including the frets, get any oils or anything off, just to help the polishing process. Really, really happy with how everything turned out so far. You know, between the fret ends and rolling the edges of the fretboard. I picked it up and held it, and it just feels absolutely phenomenal. What a big difference from how this thing felt from the factory. Not that it didn't feel good, but, you know, it just has that feel where you could tell it's kind of like a $300 guitar. But, you know, once you do this stuff to it, it's just so much better. So we got this wiped down. What I'm going to do next is prep for polishing. I'm going to tape off the sides of the fretboard. I like to use a Dremel tool on a low speed with a mag aluminum polish. You know, there's a bunch of different fret polishes out there. You can do it however you want. You could use steel wool. You can use the micro mesh. I like to use the polished because it just really, really makes them shine and makes them really nice and slick, so your string bends and everything just feel really good. Just take caution if you're using a Dremel. You don't want to, you know, heat up the fret too much. People say that it can actually cause it to lift out of the fretboard over time, but I think that's kind of crazy. It would take a lot of heat to do that, I feel like. But just be careful. I like to use it on a low speed, and I don't stay in the same spot for a long time. And you really just got to hit each fret a little bit, and it's really not that much work. So if you feel better doing it by hand, do it by hand. If you want to do it with you know, your real fine steel wool, do that. But just like I said, make sure you have everything taped off. But let's go ahead and get this prepped, and we will get these frets polished. All right, so before I start polishing, I'm just going ahead and taking some steel wool and just cleaning the frets up first before I polish it, just to get that initial smoothness there. You're probably thinking, why don't you have your fretboard taped off? I'm using the fret guard. I probably should tape it off, but as long as you're careful, this whole thing's going to get cleaned and oiled in the end, and you're not going to be able to tell a difference anyway. Everything that's supposed to be taped off is taped off, so I'm taking the precautions. If you want to tape off your fretboard, go ahead, but I really don't feel there's any need to, so I'm just simply going and putting the guard on, making the steel wool nice and thin so it doesn't overlap onto the fretboard, and I'm just cleaning up the fret. All right, so we're going to move on to the Dremel. I went ahead and coated the little buffing pad lightly. You don't really need that much. This stuff goes a really long way. You can tell it's a pretty small Dremel. I got it from Harbor Freight. This is the polish I'm using. It is the Mother's Mag aluminum polish. It works really, really well. It's not exactly made for frets, but it works super good. And yeah, we're just going to use light pressure. I don't even need to tape off the fretboard because I have it covered, the frets that I'm not hitting yet, and the fret guard will cover most of it. And I mean, any little stuff you get on the fretboard, you can just clean off later. But we're going to start at a low speed, and I might have to increase it because this thing bogs down pretty easy because it's really small and it's not, you know, a real high RPM, you know, Dremel tool. So let's go ahead and start here. And I will be, you know, like kind of curving the fret guard just so we get the sides of the fret. I'm going to start at 1 here and increase. I'm just going to do this down here to get any residual off. So we're at about 3. And you can hear how much it's bogging down. And I'm not even putting pressure. It's literally the weight of the Dremel tool itself. And it really doesn't take much. We're not really going crazy here. Get the sides. All right, so we're going to go ahead and wipe the polish off now with a rag. And I'll tell you what, man, these things are looking super good. I love the way these things come out. So everything went smooth. The fret ends look really, really good. And hopefully the camera does it justice. I'm not really sure if it will. Didn't really make a mess on anything, but if I did, it can all just get cleaned up anyway. It's not a big deal. I'm trying to get, you know, where the bottom of the fret meets the fretboard, make sure there's nothing in that crevice there. I'm going to wipe everything down anyway and get the fret ends good. But these things are a huge, huge improvement from what they were. So super excited about that. Alright, so I don't even know. I can try to zoom in and focus. Let's see here. So you can tell they look a ton better than they did. And yeah, I'm going to go ahead and get this thing untaped. We're going to wipe the fretboard down again, and then it's time to oil the fretboard. All right, so those are all nice and polished. It's time to oil the fretboard. Got everything wiped down, and for that I am using the Dunlop fingerboard deep conditioner. It came in the whole kit. I like this or the F1 oil. I kind of just like how this is a little bit thinner. It's not as thick as the F1 oil, but either or, they both work great. This is just what I've been using lately, and I really like this stuff. I'm going to put it on, let it soak in for a little while, and then wipe it off. So you kind of have to press it on to get it going. And we're going to get the sides of the fretboard too, where we did all that rolling. All right, so we got it all wiped down. Everything is looking great. It's feeling great. I cannot wait to play it. I mean, just wrapping my hand around it Huge improvement in my opinion. I can't wait to see how this thing's going to feel when you play it. The fret ends feel absolutely amazing. They look a lot better. Got everything untaped. This isn't really part of what we're doing here, but I figured while we're here, I'm going to throw on some locking tuners. I went out and bought these. Nothing crazy. They're made by All Parts, and I wanted to check out how these things are. They seem pretty solid. I've heard good things about them, and they were only like, I think like $68 or something like that. So not that this guitar had any tuning stability issues, but I figured it couldn't hurt, and it's a great upgrade platform. So I figured we could just slowly start throwing some parts at it. And yeah, so I'm going to throw those on, put the strings back on, and I will show you the final product, and I'll tell you what I think overall. All right, well, it's all back together. The strings are on. I am super happy with how it came out. Huge improvement. I can't wait to play this thing. Moral of the story is, don't be afraid to work on your own guitars. I am by no means a professional luthier. I'm self-taught. I've been working on my own guitars for probably, over 10 years now. And just, with getting tips from people or getting shown from professionals or just watching hours and hours of videos and just trial and error. If you have a crappy guitar, don't be afraid to practice working on it, and your skills will improve, as time goes by. But you can take a $100 guitar, $200 guitar, or in this case a $300 guitar, and you can make it feel and play like a super high-end, $800-900 guitar. I mean, I would compare how this feels right now to my Tim Henson or my Jake Bowen Signature. I mean, those guitars are about $1,000, or the Tim Henson's is over $1,000, and I would compare to how this feels right now to those guitars. And just the little things like that can dramatically improve the playability. These strings feel silky smooth when doing bends on the frets now, and it's just an awesome thing. So don't be afraid to work on your own guitars. Just find whatever method works best for you. There's probably 1,000 different ways to do the same thing and get a good result. You just have to find which one is best for you. So that's pretty much it for this video, guys. I hope you stuck around this long. I know it was kind of a long video, but I wanted to get all the proper steps in. But until next time, stay safe, be a good person, don't be afraid to work on your guitars, and we'll see you in the next video.